WHGE 95.3 FM. Coming up, the Open Eye.
Those of us that indulge in or commit intellectual violence don't do so for the pleasure of mental masturbation or ego diddling. We do so because the chains of oppression in our people's minds are deep and difficult to remove.
Good morning, my children of the sun. Welcome to the Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm your host, third eye optometrist, Patrice Gibbs, here to get your eye open. Yes, indeed. And I know you're going to learn something today. That's for sure. All right. Let's get it moving. And as we always start off, every generation has its purpose. Ours is to reveal the truth and reverse the brainwashing. And man, do we need to clear that up. Let me give you a quick quote here. It's from late brother George Jackson. Settle your quarrels. Come together. Understand the reality of our situation. Understand that fascism is already here. That people are already dying who could be saved. That generations more will die or live poor, butchered half lives if you fail to act. Do what must be done. Discover your humanity and your love in revolution. Pass on the torch. Join us. Give up your life for the people. George Jackson was assassinated in 1971. His words are still relevant. Let me get my disclaimer out the way. All right.
The views and opinions expressed on Open Eye are those of the hosts, guests, and contributors and do not reflect the policy or position of WHGE 95.3 FM nor our sponsor, the Delaware Center for Homeless Vets. Any content provided by Open Eye's hosts, guests, or contributors are theirs and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, company, or individual.
WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. All right. Moving right along. I might have taught on this before, but I'm still going to teach on it today because it's that season. Hey, Sherry, how you doing, sister? All right. How old were you when you found out the watermelon stereotype about black people started because white people resented the success of black farmers who were making a fortune selling the fruit? They pushed the stereotype to damage sales and distort the image of our thriving business. That's where hey on. Okay. After emancipation, many black people turned to watermelon farming as a way to build independence. The fruit was affordable, easy to grow, and in high demand. For a while, it became a symbol of black success. Black farmers were feeding their communities and making real money from the land. But white people couldn't stand to see formerly enslaved people thriving. So they turned the watermelon into a racist weapon. Through ads, cartoons, and newspapers, they pushed the image of black people as lazy, greedy, and childish, with watermelons in hand. The stereotype caught on. It made the fruit a symbol of ridicule instead of success. Sales dropped, public perception shifted. And just like that, a booming path to economic freedom for many black families was deliberately sabotaged. And you know what? And this is crazy. It worked. It worked. Because even now you have black people that are apprehensive or ashamed to be seen by a watermelon or carrying a watermelon. Because that stereotype did so much damage. It's something that even some of our people will tell you. I won't be seen carrying a watermelon because then they're going to think you're an N-word. Shame on you. And it's the same thing with fried chicken. We love fried chicken. And we made it a booming business. Because while we were seasoning and frying that chicken up, okay, whites were boiling their chicken and making it as white as it could be with no seasoning. And somebody tasted our chicken, and foolishly we taught them how to make it. I'll tell you something else that comes out of racism: tipping. Do you know that overseas they'll look at you crazy if you leave a tip? What are you doing? Because they are paid fair wages, livable wages for their jobs as wait staff or whatever. Tipping was invented so employers didn't have to pay black workers. After slavery was abolished, the U.S. had a problem. Millions of newly freed black people, but no intention to pay them fairly. So restaurant and railroad lobbyists came up with a workaround. Yeah. Let customers decide if workers get paid. They pushed for a system where employers owed zero in wages and called it tipping. It spread fast because it kept black workers poor and desperate. In 1938, the Fair Labor Standards Act was passed. It set a national minimum wage, but it excluded restaurant workers because the majority were black. Even now, in 2025, the federal tip wage is $2.13 an hour. Employers are legally allowed to pay less than minimum wage as long as you tip enough to cover it. Tipping was never about generosity. It was about keeping us down. Yeah, that's right. Yes, D. I see you, Brother Vaughn. Yeah. If it don't have seeds, it ain't watermelon. Watch out what you eat. It's that genetically modified crap. It do nothing but lead you to poor health and make you sick. Now, that's where WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye, right with you. Okay. Let's see here. All right. WHGE 95.3 FM, the open eye. Yeah, right. You know, it's something, what business can lead to in friendships is that and the other. Especially when it's a black man that outsmarts a bunch of white people. And one of those black men that seemed to be really good at it was Michael Jackson. Yeah. And not only was he good at it, well, when he did what he did, he was friends with Beatle Paul McCartney. The story of Michael Jackson, Paul McCartney, and the Beatles catalog has fascinated music enthusiasts for decades. It all began with a casual conversation during the shooting of the Say 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 music video. It was a duet between a duet with Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney. It's a big hit. McCartney mentioned the lucrative investment potential in music publishing, to which Jackson jokingly replied, "One day I'll own your songs." Fast forward to August 1985, and Jackson made that quip a reality by purchasing the majority of the Beatles catalog. 251 songs for $47 million, outbidding McCartney himself. For context, music publishing is a gold mine. Whenever a song is issued in media, the owner of the publishing rights gets paid. Originally, the Beatles' publishing rights belonged to John Lennon and Paul McCartney, who had formed Northern Songs Limited. However, due to the hostile takeover in 1969, McCartney and Lennon sold their shares. And when the rights resurfaced on the market in 1985, Michael Jackson swooped in, leaving Paul McCartney feeling betrayed. McCartney and Jackson's friendship, which began in the 1970s, soured after that purchase. McCartney lamented, "He won't even answer my letters. So we haven't talked and we don't have a great relationship." Jackson's response was a blunt, "Oh, Paul, that's just business." Jackson's acquisition not only gave him a steady revenue stream, but also served as collateral for his lavish lifestyle. But more than that, when Michael Jackson acquired the Beatles' rights, the Beatles' publishing rights, he stumbled upon an unexpected treasure: the complete publishing rights to Little Richard's music. This surprising twist led Jackson to a remarkable act of generosity. Upon realizing his newfound ownership, Jackson immediately returned Little Richard's rights to him, completely free of charge. Yeah, Michael Jackson. WHGE 95.3 FM, the open eye. Patrice, Gibbs, your third eye optometrist, moving right along. Okay. It's a quote from Neil deGrasse. People turn to religion not to be informed, but to be massaged. It tells them what they want to hear, not what they need to know. Only one discipline exists to inform the human mind, to expand human knowledge, and that discipline is science. From Neil deGrasse. You know, it's something. I saw a video one of my coworkers showed me, and it was this minister, a black minister, and he was talking about tithes. And he said, he's talking about the necessity of tithing. which, I personally think is a problem. Anybody that's actually studied the Bible knows it's not about tithing. Oh, we got here, Margo. Come on. Okay. This minister said, stop giving money to the poor. Stop giving money because God is not going to bless you for giving money to the poor. Your blessings come when you give money in church. What a piece of crap this dude is. He actually up in the pulpit telling people don't give money to people out here in need. Bring that money to the church and the church will take care of them. While him and Deacon Chickenfoot take your money with a police escort to the bank. The same bank that won't give you a loan to go into business, to buy a home, to buy a car. So Reverend Chickenfoot, the money ain't coming right. Now you tell you stop being out there giving money to the poor. Like, that's my money. You bring that money on here in the church and put it in the collection plate. Jeez Louise. It's something how so many people that are caught up in religion don't study. They're echo chambers. They go out and repeat what they hear from the pulpit. The opening lines of Genesis depicting God's creation of the heavens and the earth immediately confront us with a fundamental epistemological challenge. If no human witness, no journalist was present at this primordial event, how can this recounting claim factual accuracy? The assertion that the biblical authors received direct downloads from God is a theological position, not self-evident truth. The absence of an eyewitness account for creation raises pertinent questions about the author's source of knowledge. To suggest that the author of Genesis doesn't know what happened in the pre-human cosmos is not an act of sacrilege, but an acknowledgement of literary and historical constraints. This perspective extends beyond Genesis. The claim that Jesus never was in the wilderness, if interpreted as a literal absence from any such historical event, underscores the argument that certain biblical scenarios may be narrative constructions rather than historical reportage. Such scenarios are not divine revelations, but rather imaginative elaborations. And that's pretty much what that comes down to. And I know that a lot of people, I can remember when I was a kid, asking the minister, how did we know that the Bible is the Word of God? He said, because it was inspired by God. And that's where it gets the whole message all mixed up. Because what we don't understand is the messenger is not important. It's the message that shifts consciousness. When the messenger overshadows the message itself is inevitably lost. The profound evolution of truth has echoed through countless voices, languages, and ages. Yet time and again, humanity elevates the speaker to divine status, overlooking the essence of what was actually said. And we see this pattern throughout history with Yeshua, better known as Jesus, with Buddha, with countless prophets, sages, and mystics. The messenger arise to reveal, to illuminate, But the moment they depart, what their followers do, they reshape the original message to align with their own desires. What was once pure and direct becomes structured, distorted, and ultimately rewritten. Authentic messages require no temples or sacred texts. They demand no devotion or rigid hierarchy. Instead, true messages awaken. They do not enslave. Y'all hear that, Christian, Muslims, and Jews? If a message leads to control, it's not the truth. If it fosters division, it's not the truth. If it instills fear, it is certainly not the truth. Truth does not worship, truth does not kneel, and truth needs no name attached to it. It simply is. This is Open Eye. All right, WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. Yeah, stay with history. I saw recently, I talking about the enduring legacy of the Arab civilization. Far from disappearing, Arab civilization profoundly shaped the modern world. This was his stance. Laying foundational knowledge in numerous fields that are often mistakenly attributed solely to later European advancements. Their intellectual prowess yielded innovations in mathematics, science, medicine, and daily life, the impact of which resonates to this day. In the realm of science and mathematics, Arab scholars were pioneers. They gave us algebra and developed the algorithms that underpin modern computing. And their contributions to astronomy were revolutionary, according to this essay. They were the first to understand that all objects in the universe exert gravity. Really? A full 600 years before Isaac Newton articulated his law of universal gravitation. And it was a towering figure of this era, Ibn al-Haytham, whose work predates many European scientific breakthroughs. He is credited with establishing the world's first true scientific method, centuries before Bacon or Descartes. Further, his writings remarkably anticipated Newton's first law of motion and Kepler's first law of planetary motion by 600 and 500 years respectively. Okay? Beyond theoretical science, Arab civilization transformed medicine, establishing principles and practices that laid the groundwork for modern healthcare. They also introduced the world to the coffee industry, a global phenomenon that continues to thrive to this day. The linguistic legacy of Arabic is equally pervasive, with countless words integrated into English language. Terms such as sugar, cipher, zenith, nadir, admiral, apricot, and even algebra itself were direct borrowings from Arabic, underscoring the deep and often unacknowledged influence of Arab culture on Western vocabulary. Despite these monumental contributions, the Arab world's pivotal role in shaping global history and scientific progress is frequently overlooked or marginalized in historical narratives. It is imperative to acknowledge and appreciate the immense and enduring legacy of Arab civilization, ensuring the rightful place in the annals of human achievement. Yes, indeed. Where they get it? You think you kidding? Where they get it? Let me tell you where the cradle of astronomy is. Long before the likes of Stonehenge or early Mesopotamian observatories, ancient Africans were charting the cosmos with remarkable precision. Where they get it? Evidence suggests that ancient Egyptians constructed the world's first true astronomical observatory approximately 4,000 years ago. Where they get it? This groundbreaking feat allowed them to meticulously match stars and celestial movements predating similar advancements in other parts of the world, like in Arabia. Their sophisticated understanding of astronomy was intrinsically linked to their religious beliefs, agricultural practices, and the construction of their monumental architecture. Monumental. Where they get it? Because let us not forget that the Arabs are AD people. They have no historical listed achievements before the AD. For instance, let's take the advent of iron metallurgy, which marked a pivotal turning point in human history. And it was in Africa, specifically the Kingdom of Kush, where iron smelting was independently invented and perfected approximately 2,000 years before Europe even grasped the concept of working with iron. And that's before Asia where the Arabs came from. The reason they had melanin because they interacted with the African. This technological supremacy gave Kush a significant advantage in tool-making, agriculture, and warfare, underscoring Africa's often underappreciated role as a cradle of technological innovation. Okay? Timbuktu's intellectual zenith. During Europe's dark ages, a beacon of intellectual enlightenment shone brightly in West Africa. African mathematicians in the legendary city of Timbuktu were not only solving complex algebra equations, but also making significant contributions to astronomy, medicine, and law. The Sankore University in Timbuktu, alongside other centers of learning, attracted scholars from across the globe, including Arabia. Boasting vast libraries and fostering an environment of rigorous academic pursuit that rivaled in some aspects surpassed contemporary European intellectual centers and Arab intellectual centers. Because you got to remember that long before Timbuktu, long before it, when the Kemites, the Egyptians, built the pyramids, they built the pyramids exact center on the Earth's mass. And if you measure the circumference of the pyramids, you get the figure pi. And don't forget the Pythagorean theorem. Pythagoras got that in chemistry. Okay? So that's where they got it. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. Hey, y'all, did the Democrats go back to Texas with their gerrymandering? Hey, this is from Michael Archino. To me, it's quite obvious how inherently racist this all is, talking about the gerrymandering in Texas. It's not by coincidence that in the same week marking the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act being signed into law, Republicans in Texas are threatening to arrest members of the minority Democratic Party in their efforts to steal political power from black and brown people, all in the service of their bigoted leader. As explained by the Orange Disaster in a Tuesday phone interview with CNBC, we have an opportunity in Texas to pick up 5 seats. We have a really good governor, really, and good people in Texas. And I won Texas. I got the highest vote in the history of Texas. I don't know about that. All right. When the Tangerine Tyrant believes entitles him to 5 more seats is laid bare in the racial makeup of the districts being targeted by Texas Governor Greg Abbott and Republicans in the state legislature. They include the current district, Congressman Al Green, which includes a portion of Houston, all right, where, as noted by Capital B News, the proposed change would drop the black voting age population from 39% to 11%. Likewise, the black voting age population of Congressman Mark Vesey, Fort Worth-based district, would drop 25%. Then there is targeting Congressman Greg Casar's district in Austin, where last year he became the first Latino to represent the Texas Capitol in Congress, Capital City in Congress. Speaking with The Guardian about the proposed shift in his district that would significantly dilute the voting power of Latinos, Casar explained, even the conservative Supreme Court said Central Texas Latinos deserve a district. And that's why my district exists. If Donald Trump is able to suppress Latino voters here in Austin, he'll try to spread that plan across America. You believe that? Well, the Texas GOP certainly doesn't want those Latinos in urban dwellings voting anyway. But I suppose it's the Latinos in the border region that went GOP in the last election with their dumbasses. Texas Republicans would just erase them like the minorities in the big cities too. Casar's point about Trump's motivations and intentions should not go ignored, though. Thankfully, his sentiment was recently echoed by Jasmine Crockett, Texas Congresswoman. This isn't just about 5 seats in Texas. This is about a power grab. It's about basically setting the tone for what Donald Trump will try to do throughout the country so that he can suppress the voices of black and brown people just so that he can stay in power. To me, it's quite obvious how inherently racist this all is. Yet I'm not hearing many others, including Democratic leadership, make a similar argument to the public. Yes, it is right to dismiss Abbott's plans as stupid and just not right. Stupid because for all of Abbott's barking in service of bankruptcy Batista in the White House, there isn't much he can do right now with the 50 Texas Democrats in the state legislature that fled to the state of Illinois to deny the quorum needed to convene the special session Abbott called to proceed with the GOP's redistricting plans. See, the thing is this. If you have good ideals and things that attract the voters and what have you, you don't need to cheat. Here we are 60 years after the Voting Rights Act became law. should not be where we are now. But we are. And the Democratic Party must stop pussyfooting around about calling out the orange disaster and the GOP for who they are, what they do, and why they do it. Because they're a bunch of racist bastards that don't want black people voting. Bottom line. All right. Moving right along. Got a little thing on here. All right. Pay attention here. Has some unanswered questions about Jelani Day. I don't know if it's me or what this is. Okay. Jelani Day, a 25-year-old Illinois State University graduate, didn't just disappear. His case raises deeply troubling questions about how this country addresses the death of black individuals. Jelani, a bright, focused speech pathology student with a future full of promise, went missing August 24th, 2021. His mother, Carmen Bowden Day, described him as everything she prayed for. 2 days after his disappearance, Jelani's car was found abandoned in a wooded area in Peru, Illinois. 11 days later, his body was discovered in the Illinois River. Alarmingly, it took authorities 19 days to identify him. Despite a missing persons report being filed, this delay meant a black man's body lay in the morgue for weeks while his mother desperately sought answers. Peru, Illinois has a documented history as a sundown town. Communities where black individuals were historically unsafe, often violently so, after dark. While many believe such practices are a relic of the past, Jelani's presence and subsequent death in Peru raised critical questions that remain unanswered. Was his presence there a coincidence? Or is there a darker connection to the town's racial history? The official narrative suggests Jelani Day likely drowned, with no signs of trauma or foul play. But a second autopsy commissioned by his mother and conducted by a private pathologist revealed shocking discrepancies. According to the second examination, Jelani's brain, liver, spleen, and eyes were missing. And his jaw was reportedly sawed out, and his genitals were gone. Furthermore, the state of decomposition of his body was inconsistent with the timeline of being in the river. It's difficult to reconcile these findings with the official conclusion of drowning. To suggest that a healthy 25-year-old man would wander into a sundown town, strip himself naked, remove his own goddamn organs, and then drown himself defies belief and logic. But here's the thing, there's a disturbing pattern. Jelani Day's case, with his missing organs and a questionable official explanation, is not an isolated incident. There are other high-profile cases involving black individuals found dead under suspicious circumstances with missing organs. Kendrick Johnson, Georgia, 2013, found deceased rolled up in a gym mat with organs reportedly missing and replaced with newspaper. Tamla Horsford, Georgia, 2018, found dead at the sleepover with initial reports of an accidental fall despite her injuries. And she is hanging out with a group of white women. These cases highlight a deeply concerning pattern where official investigations into the deaths of black individuals often yield unsatisfying answers, leading to accusations of cover-ups and gaslighting for grieving families. Currently, there are no suspects, no arrests in Jelani Day's death. This lack of accountability and reinforces a painful truth for many black families. When the victims are black, cases too often go unsolved and unbothered. As Carmen Bolden Day firmly states, my son did not drown. Someone murdered him. And someone is covering it up. Her words resonate deeply with those who believe America has a history of burying black bodies rather than protecting them. We don't just believe it, we know it. Jelani Day's story is more than just a missing persons case. It has become a powerful symbol of the dehumanization of black people, both in life and death. When public attention wanes, it's crucial that we do not look away. We must continue to ask questions, demand answers, and amplify the call for justice. Say his name, Jelani Day, because we must not forget. We must investigate and make noise until silence is no longer safe. Say his name, Jelani Day. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. Hey, Brother Jafar, see you there. Okay, moving right along. Tell you about a conversation. And the conversation, it began simply enough. Told you about this before, but I kind of modified this a little bit here. All right. So, a white historian with a PhD to her name accused me of promoting the idea that all white people are inherently bad. I responded by explaining that this narrative is not that I, as a product of Western education, created. Instead, it is a narrative that white history itself, particularly in the United States, actively promotes and sustains through its selective celebration of historical figures. Now, this assertion was met with confusion, a reaction that only strengthened my conviction. I proceeded to explain my perspective, offering examples of the men we have been taught to revere. I mentioned George Washington, the so-called father of our nation, a man who enslaved and raped human beings. I pointed out that a genocidal maniac like Andrew Jackson graces our currency, and that we have a national holiday and parades dedicated to Christopher Columbus, whose actions ushered in a dark era of violence and suffering. You ever been to Chicago? And Chicago's tours still celebrate the life of Al Capone, the notorious gangster. I will argue that a significant number of celebrated historical figures in this culture are in fact villains. They are individuals whose statues stand tall in our parks, whose names are etched in our cities, and whose stories are romanticized in our folklore. And what are the true heroes? asked the historian if she had ever heard of Smedley Butler. Smedley Butler, a decorated soldier who single-handedly saved the United States from a military coup, yet has been largely erased from American history. And she never heard of him. He's a PhD. I asked why there was no nationwide celebrations for William Lloyd Garrison, the abolitionist whose tireless work was foundational to the fight for freedom. She had no answer. Asked why Eugene V. Debs, a fierce advocate for the working class and social justice, is routinely ignored in history and political science courses. Again, she had no response. It seems the best way for a white historical figure to be suppressed in American history is to stand for genuine justice and human liberation. It is acceptable for a figure like Thomas Jefferson to offer lip service to freedom and equality. But woe to the individual who dares to try and make it a reality. Therefore, when I or others focus on the villains of white history, it is not an act of malice or a blanket accusation. It is simple and honest reflection of the historical figures who represented us in the public square. They are the ones on the monuments, on the currency, and in the history books that we're given. If white people desire to be viewed in a different light, perhaps they should begin by celebrating their true heroes and living up to the teachings and examples of those who truly fought for justice. It seems easier and more profitable, however, to demand that non-white people accept the historical propaganda and embrace these villains as heroes. In the end, the historian concluded our conversation by suggesting we shouldn't teach about heroes or villains at all. A final statement that felt less like philosophical ideal and more like a convenient way to avoid accountability for the choices we have already made. You're educated in America, you're indoctrinated. Yeah. That's why I don't want to talk about it. So I can get triggered when someone points out the reality of your history. You know, and there's something when those that have been indoctrinated, one of the complaints they make is, well, why do people get upset when we want to say or celebrate white culture? What is white culture? I know what Irish culture is. No one gets upset when on St. Patrick's Day. I know what German culture is. There are communities in German culture that celebrate drinking beer, and nobody has a problem with that. But see, what white culture is, and what you get upset about and get triggered about when people point it out to you, is that you want to celebrate intolerance and bigotry. Running around with Confederate and Nazi flags. And the damnedest thing about that is Nazi flags are not allowed to be flown in Germany. And yet they wonder why. Will poor white people support a system that keeps them broke? This isn't a question of simple ignorance, but a sophisticated manipulation strategy, a concept famously described by sociologist W.E.B. Du Bois as the psychological wage of whiteness. Du Bois argued that even when impoverished white people had no land, wealth, or political power, they were still taught one valuable lesson. At least you're not black. This insidious idea was powerful and often deadly, and still is, because it granted poor white people just enough social status to feel superior to another group, ensuring that true working class solidarity would never take root. This currency of social status was in many ways more powerful than a monetary wage. Look up Lyndon Johnson. Poor white people couldn't buy land, but they could sit in the front of the bus. They might be subjected to unfair literacy tests to vote, but they were not subjected to lynching for simply attempting to cast a ballot. They were poor, but they were white. And that alone was a social status that made them feel rich in comparison. This intangible payment was the bedrock of racial hierarchy that created division, allowing the elite to maintain their power. The system was never designed to be fair. It was designed to be controlling. The elite didn't just create this racial hierarchy, they weaponized it. By making whiteness a reward in itself, they created a powerful wedge between poor white and black communities. These two groups, who had the same economic enemies, never joined forces because one was taught to see the other as a social wrong beneath them. Actually, they did join forces once, and that was during the Bacon Rebellion. That's what motivated the elites to make sure that there was always a division between working class blacks and whites. And the promise of this psychological wage was enough to keep the working class fractured and fighting amongst themselves rather than uniting against the true source of their oppression. This manipulation continues to manifest today. When we see people voting against their own economic interests, opposing universal health care, fighting against equity, or clinging to racial privilege while suffering in silence, we are seeing the modern day effects of this centuries-old system. This isn't a display of power. It's a testament to the enduring effectiveness of manipulation. The psychological wage of whiteness remains a potent force, convincing many to protect the system that keeps them and everyone else from achieving true liberation. Okay. Now, was the American Constitution only written for white people? Okay. By now, some of you may have heard of that University of Florida student, Preston Damsky. He wrote a paper arguing that the U.S. Constitution only applied to white people, not blacks, not Hispanics, not indigenous people, not women. And it should be reinterpreted that way by force. So his recommendations are that voting rights should be stripped of anyone who is not white. That shoot-to-kill order should be authorized at the border to keep all non-whites out of the country, and that the country should be reclaimed by force for people for whom it was intended, white people. And you might think, well, that's a wackadoodle argument. Nobody's going to buy that. Well, his paper received an award for academic excellence from a current sitting federal judge of the United States. And don't forget, 6 of the 9 Supreme Court justices are originalists. In other words, they believe that the Constitution should be interpreted the way the Founding Fathers meant it to be interpreted. And Stephen Miller, a big advocate of these ideals, is Trump's chief of staff. So we're branding fascism as fidelity to the Constitution and advocating the use of force to create racial supremacy. Now we're in the final solution territory. Okay? So if anybody hearing this, let non-white Americans beware. Yeah, spread it around. Yeah, because if you think it's only undocumented migrants they're coming after, if they don't get their way, you're tripping. We know that as black people. And that's where WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. All right, I'm Patrice Gibbs. And what effect does that kind of crap have on people? Well, let's take the guy from Dayton, Ohio, who was arrested August the 1st after posting a threatening message on X, formerly Twitter, targeting black residents in Cincinnati. The post called for violence against black people in Cincinnati, suggesting the creation of mobs and setting a goal of 30,000 black deaths by Sunday. The threat came after a viral video surfaced depicting an interracial brawl in downtown Cincinnati. Okay. The Cincinnati Police Department alerted the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, who investigated and tracked the threat, to Scott Hanna, a 30-year-old Dayton resident. Hanna was subsequently arrested and charged with making an interstate communication with a threat to injure. He is also facing state charges in connection with another violent incident. What was he doing out? You know what the other violent incident was? It was a near decapitation. He hit somebody in the neck with a sword, a whole ass sword. Damn. This arrest highlights the potential for social media to be used to incite racial violence and domestic terrorism, a growing concern for law enforcement. Let me tell you another concern about social media. Okay? That it will spread truth and knowledge. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. Yeah, you know, I talked some about religion. You know, it's something that when you die, you're dead. You don't know anything. It doesn't bother you. It doesn't hurt you. You always say funerals for the living. When you die, you're not bothered. The people around you who still live are bothered. It's the same thing when you're stupid. When you're stupid, you don't know you're stupid. And don't bother you, it bothers the people around you that have to deal with your dumb ass. Let me tell you about Bonhoeffer and his haunting insight. The insidious nature of stupidity. From his prison cell in 1943, awaiting execution for his role in a plot to assassinate Hitler, Dietrich Bonhoeffer penned what would become his most chilling observations. It's so relevant. Against stupidity, we are defenseless. Neither protest nor the use of force accomplish anything here. Reason falls on deaf ears. What made this particular insight so haunting wasn't just its grim context, but its unsettling precision. Bonhoeffer understood that evil, in its very nature, carries the seeds of its own destruction. Malice, he noted, eventually creates unease, resistance, and ultimately its own breakdown. The perpetrator of evil at some level knows they are doing wrong, fostering an internal conflict that eventually leads to subversion. However, stupidity, Bonhoeffer argued, is fundamentally different. It is not inherently malicious, but rather a dangerous form of functional blindness. Those acting out of stupidity often believe they are doing good, making them absolutely immune to correction or reason. This isn't merely a lack of intelligence, it's profound inability to engage with reality and process information honestly. Perhaps Bonhoeffer's most pressing insight was about how this functional stupidity serves existing power structures. Those in power don't necessarily need to actively suppress information. They simply need to create conditions where the honest processing of information becomes prohibitively difficult. In such an environment, people caught in the grip of stupidity become unwitting tools, reinforcing the status quo with unwavering conviction because they genuinely believe they are on the right side. This makes stupidity, in Bonhoeffer's view, a far more insidious threat than malice. That's how you get the tangerine tyrant in office. That's how you get the legacy of Ronald Reagan made roasting hell, made the devil sodomize him with a pitchfork, being revered. Because when you're stupid, you don't know you're stupid. MAGA. Damn. WHGE 95.3 FM. Open eye. All right. I'm Patrice Gibbs. Coming around to the close pretty soon here. I know you listen to Open Eye and study anything about a history. Most of you know who Kwame Ture is. For those that don't, he's Stokely Carmichael. There was an interview they had with Mike Wallace on what he would say to white people. Mike Wallace asking the effort to understand him as a black man. And Mike Wallace asked him, if you had the chance to stand in front of the white community and say anything you desired, say to them, understand me, white man, what would you say? Yeah. Kwame Ture responded, I would say, understand yourself, white man. That the white man's burden should not have been preached in Africa, but it should have been preached among you. That you need to now civilize yourself. You have moved to destroy and disrupt. You have taken people away. You have broken down their system, and you have called all that civilization. And we who have suffered at this are now saying to you, you are the killers of the dreams. You are the savages. Yes, it is you who have always been uncivilized. Civilize yourself. Kwame Ture. All right. Thank you for joining me on Open Eye. I hope you learned something, because I learned something before I got here. That's word. And as we always tell you, destiny determines who enters your life, but you decide who stays. Therefore, value those who value you, and don't treat those as a priority. We treat you as an option. This is the Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm Patrice Gibbs. Thanks for joining us. All right. Yeah, civilize yourself, because the African has always been civilized. Global African supremacy is coming.